I'm David with EV World News. We talk about electric vehicles, green energy, and the stock markets. I'm here today with founder and editor Bill Moore. How's it going, Bill?
Hey, it's going great. Thank you very much.
All right, well, let's get into it. So my first topic today comes from The Atlantic, and this
Mm,
is saying there's no easy way or there's no easy answer to Chinese EVs.
yeah.
And the easiest answer is let's tariff the crap out of them and keep them out of the United States. But is that fair to the consumer? The rest of the world is getting the advantage of these, you know, cheaper forms of transportation. Although the United States, in all fairness, we have higher safety standards, and those safety standards probably tack on $5,000 to $10,000 a car. And I don't know that the Chinese vehicles are made to the same standards, or else you'd think, because even with the BYD Seagull, even with the 25% tariff, would still only be $12,500 in the U.S. It'd be a
Yeah.
huge bargain,
Yeah.
and it would
Well, yeah, this,
sell like
this,
hotcakes.
yeah, I'd like to encourage people to read that Atlantic article because it really lays out the issues and why, I see all the time, and probably readers of the stream also see it, where people are coming out and saying they got these cheap Chinese vehicles overseas. Why can't we have them here in the United States? And this is all the government's fault, and whatever their reasons are. So this is an interesting article because he kind of explains, yes, they do make them available for less. How much Chinese government support? There's an article came out recently where Chinese government basically gave BYD $1 billion to take over the EV market. So
Right.
you've got that kind of pressure there. And so what should the government do? You want to say, well, if we open all that up, then all those, we're going to be repeating the, what's his name? The guy that says the sucking sound, where all the jobs are, flowing out of Detroit and out of the Rust Belt, and they're going overseas, Mexico, or even worse, over to China. Ross Perot, remember the great Ross Perot and the great sucking sound. So do we want that to happen? Do you want to be gainfully employing and making the life better of a Chinese factory worker in Shanghai or Hubei or wherever, right? Or
Right.
do you want to deal with your own people who are needing to earn a living and pay for their kids to go to school and all the things that we have? So what's the answer? So in the article, he points out that this is kind of a real conundrum for the current administration because they want to advance electric vehicles. They wouldn't be, doing all these incentives and programs, building out, vast 500,000, charging stations and making all these incentives available for people. So they want that to happen. But at the same time, the market's saying, well, the things are too expensive. Why can't we get something out of China that's so? How do you balance that? And he makes the comment that there's short-term thinking, which is what led to the great sucking sound, and there's the longer-term thinking about what's the end result? What do we want? We want people to have cheaper cars, or what we want people to have cleaner air?
Well, it's kind of a conundrum for the current administration, because on the one hand they're
Or
trying
whoever
to
follows.
or whoever follows, because you got the one hand we're trying to balance out carbon emissions
Mm-hmm.
and bringing cheap cars to the United States, which in theory, if you brought in cheap cars, it would lower inflation because people are spending less money on stuff, right?
Right.
But the problem is that all of a sudden is fighting the UAW and is causing trouble with the American automakers.
You can't put that all on the UAW. I mean, there are all of the suppliers down the road. So if all those suppliers end up being Chinese suppliers for those cars, then you're not only just affecting the million or whatever it is, UAW workers that actually assemble the cars. You're affecting all of the workers in the chain below them that's supplying all those
Right.
parts. So it's a bigger issue than just, the UAW coming in there and saying, yeah, we need to be making, $50 an hour instead of 33 or, whatever they were making. So I think it's a tough one. And I knowing who I am, I tend to lean towards let's think strategically and long term rather than just this quick short term fix. So that's, again, if you get a chance, check out the article, and I'll make it. I haven't made it one of the editor's choices yet, but I'm going to do it later this morning.
And this is an interesting piece here. So last year, 8 million EVs were sold in China compared with maybe 1.4 million in the US, because we see that it's
Right.
anywhere from 1.1 to 1.4 million.
Right.
But the Chinese market has been driven mostly by BYD and then by Tesla after that.
And $1 billion from the Chinese government. Yes. Yeah.
Yes. And, but in the greater scheme of things in car manufacturing, $1 billion really isn't a lot of money. We see all
but
these.
still, that's nothing to sneeze at, because
No,
again,
it's not.
You're talking about the Chinese workers and the Chinese economy. So $1 billion, I don't know, how does $1 billion in productivity on the Chinese side compare to $1 billion in productivity on the U.S. side? I'm suspecting that probably goes a little further on the Chinese side.
Yeah. Well, ever since BYD released the Seagull initially, and this hasn't been but like a few months ago, the Chinese currencies dropped in value by about 10%. And so that dropped the price of the Seagull down below $10,000 US.
The Chinese economy is having some serious issues. I was watching a video yesterday where a gentleman was showing what's happening with the imports and what's happening with the exports. And the last year or so, they've been struggling. So we'll see.
Their economy depends on them exporting. Their economy, they can't import too much because they keep devaluing the currency, which makes all the imported goods too expensive.
Right. Well, and in imports, we're also talking about the raw materials,
right?
To assemble into things to sell back to us. So,
right. No, I get it, but it's the Chinese government. Their first reaction is always to devalue their currency, to increase employment, and to expand exports.
Right.
And it's it's one of those things, like when we talk about the Chinese stocks on Friday. It's like, nah, we're not getting into that because they're manipulating the economy and all these other things too much. I mean, we're not saying the United States doesn't do some manipulation. I mean, if inflation goes up, we reduce the money supply. We do different things to try to control
job of the
stuff.
Fed, right?
Right, right, and that's what they're supposed to do. And so when we get into these, economic situations, though, with China, it never seems like they're playing fair. And while Bill and I are in the EV space, we love seeing what the Chinese are coming up with. We know what's going on. The United States is only 5% of the planet. The other 95% of the planet can buy the Chinese EVs, and so it's interesting just to see what's going on out there, because we look at. It's funny, in the United States, people think, well, who's an American auto manufacturer? We think Ford and General Motors. It's like, well, Tesla is the most American of all the car manufacturers in the United States, and
followed by Volkswagen.
Followed by Volkswagen, yeah. And it's just really, funny. The U.S. automakers aren't really the most American because they export. You brought up Ross Perot. It's like, think about how different our country would be right now if Perot had gotten elected and we'd never exported all those jobs. So it'd be quite a bit of a different, different worldwide situation with manufacturing. China may never have gotten to be the powerhouse they are today.
Well, that's true. And if Nixon hadn't, didn't start with Kissinger. I believe Kissinger went over and got the ball rolling, and followed by Nixon's famous visit over there. And so,
right. Anyways,
they have made in the turn, in the last basically 40 years, they've made a heck of a lot of progress. Amazing. But then they've got a big base to come from too. So,
all right. So this one this is about India of all things. So Tesla's announcing investment of up to $3 billion in India next week. And they're going to start production of cars in India.
Is that confirmed, or is that just usual internet speculation?
Well, he's already had meetings with Narendra Modi,
right?
And he's at least verbally committed to all this.
Yeah, and there's been teams over there having discussions with suppliers and looking for production sites, and I'm trying to think. There's a couple of the states, I think they're called states over there, that have been rolling out, the red carpet and doing everything they can to. Tamil Nadu, I think, is one of them, and I forget the other one, but they're doing everything they can to attract, that investment in their state. So
Tesla requested lower import duties so it can test demand, and India said they're only willing to do this with a commitment from Tesla to build a factory.
Yeah.
So, see where that plays out.
They're both playing hardball. So, yeah.
Yeah, Reuters was told that Musk and Tesla will announce an investment between 2 and 3 billion US. Report states most of the investment will be spent on building a new factory. Well, I know they intend to go there, and it's just you see this because the reason I wanted to bring this up is because we saw this about the 10% of the Tesla workforce getting laid off unexpectedly, and then at the same time, they're going to go drop another factory in another market. In the world.
And of course, he comes up with the statement that now I don't know who to believe. There's reports that they're going to do away with what we would call the Model 2 or the Redwood or whatever it is. And their denial, no, we haven't done that. And then speculation saying, well, they may have canceled doing it in the Austin plant, but they're still working on building the Mexico plant, and they're getting pressure from the Mexican government to get that ball rolling. So, it's I don't know. Does Elon, or is he entitled to that? What's he looking for? $60 billion or something like that salary?
Well, that was something different. That was supposed to have been from options or warrants or something.
Yeah,
I don't know. It was a crazy thing. So now all of a sudden they're going to pull out of Delaware. It's more crazy stuff.
They put it up to a vote now to the shareholders. So I guess when they have their quarterly meeting or whatever it is, that they'll find out whether they want to give him what he's asking for or not. So,
right. No, I get it. The next article I had was talking about Rivian. Rivian's laying off workers, but they're only laying off 1% of the workforce. That seems more like a rounding error than it sounds like a huge
serious job cut. Yeah. Well, they have scaled back the plant in North Carolina, Georgia. They've scaled back what they're anticipating the size of the plant. Although I'm sure they'll probably keep options on, expansions if they need to make it. But they're scaling that back, and then of course this is I think their second round of layoffs. So they've been told you guys got to get your ship in order.
Yeah.
not with a P.
Yeah.
You guys are gonna you're struggling through the valley of death that Elon's talked about before that he had with Tesla. So and there again, when I post these stories, you get the the analyst who says, if there's one stock you want to get rid of immediately, it's Rivian, or you take your pick, Lucid, or let's say GOAV, Canoe, or the other guy that comes in and says, man, this thing has such potential. In fact, they just upgraded There's a couple of the firms that do, valuations of stock and things like that, and they've just upgraded them to a buy. So wow, where do you come
there's
down
so
on
much
that?
information. My whole thing is if Rivian started getting torched worse in the stock market, then Amazon comes in and takes them private. I mean, Amazon already owns 1/6 of the company.
Yeah.
I mean, and they are an integral part. I mean, you go down the road and you see an Amazon van. I don't know that everybody knows it's
Just over
Rivian like
here
we do.
yesterday.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't think everybody realizes that they're electric vans that are made by Rivian, but they make money on all of those. And even if they were to pull out of the consumer car business and just make those vans, it's pretty beneficial that was a money-making division, or that is a money-making division, the money-making division of Rivian.
Yeah.
So Rivian's not as diversified as Tesla. So they're making the cars and the vans, or I should say the trucks, SUVs, and the vans. They don't actually make a car, but they're not into the energy sector,
Right.
or the full self-driving, or
spaceships,
data. Yeah, well, that's a whole different company.
That's
but
a different company.
but right.
Yeah.
But Tesla's got its hands in a lot of other things, like how Tesla's been selling carbon credits to the other car makers. And Tesla's figured out all kinds of ways to make money. And a lot of this was because they just happened to have been formed when interest rates were at historic lows for a few years. And Rivian and Lucid haven't had that advantage. They've gotten into the game as interest rates have gone up.
It's an uphill fight. Yep.
No, there's no question.
Well, fortunately, Rivian has, Amazon, and Lucid has the Saudi royal family. So,
So I want to talk about an article from Bill Pierce at EV Info. Okay. And he's talked about how bidirectional charging and DERs. Now that's a term I think it stands for distributed energy resources. I'm not 100% that I've got that right. Will save grids from the massive influx of EV charging. Now, I've talked on here a couple times about vehicle to grid. This is usually a Wednesday thing with Mike Herzog, since he's the engineer.
Which makes sense,
Yeah, but it's a topic, and people, if I wasn't doing what I'm doing now with EV World, I wouldn't have any clue what vehicle to grid meant. I'd probably just completely blow it off. But it's such an important concept.
Yes.
And so as we look at all of this solar power and all of this wind power that's mismatched on the grid as to when people are using things, you need battery storage to take in the power and make it available when used. Well, vehicle to grid can make it so that you actually make money using the battery on your car. And the way this works is during the off-peak hours, the energy company your charger, the energy company is pushing cheap power into your car. And during peak hours, like from 5 p.m. to 9 p.m. at night, it's taking power from your car and using it to power the grid. And you're getting paid for that power because you're doing power generation at a higher rate than what you received it at. So you're making a profit from having your car on the grid. And
arbitrage.
Arbitrage. And then after 11 p.m., when it dies off and then the wind starts to pick up, then it fuels your car back up. And it's a very interesting theory. So it's not just, go ahead, Bill.
No, I was just going to say, so how old do you think this idea is?
Oh God, I'm sure it's been around as long as wind and solar have been in use.
Well, yeah, but I mean, in terms of electric cars and taking that and using it.
Well,
I think we can actually
2010.
No, we can. Oh no, modern version, late 90s.
Wow.
Dr. Willett Kempton, and God, I cannot remember. There were two professors that I interviewed in 1999, I think, who had just written a paper on this. And so I got them on, and I did, one of my very first podcasts was on this. But I think we can even go back further, because I think, if memory serves, some of the very first work on wind to battery in-home storage and that kind of thing was done by Thomas Edison.
Damn.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's really getting back there a ways.
A
Yeah.
long ways. Yeah. So
Well,
it's, you know, all old things are new again periodically.
yeah, and I believe the DERs are referring to the big, large scale battery farms.
Well,
So,
probably. Yeah.
and other than us talking about how Hawaii just replaced a coal-fired power plant in this, and they've already done this in Australia,
Hmm.
it'll come to the mainland US. I know it's already in process, but what's happening is they're taking EV style batteries. And we reported that Cattle yesterday, or CATL, just reported that they ran a 5-year test on some of these with zero degradation in
Right.
the energy storage capacities of these
Yep.
batteries. And so we're going to see these massive battery farms popping up.
Yeah, and they all won't be lithium EV batteries. I mean, those will have a place because we'll want to be able to recycle those coming out of, out of the cars. But there's a lot of work being done on other chemistries and other types of storage, everything from basically hot bricks
Yeah,
and storing heat in, on a giant,
right.
oven of some kind and pulling the heat out of that to, different chemistries from Edison's iron batteries. He was working
Mhm.
on that back, over 100 years ago, to sodium batteries, to, different chemistries that people are coming up with. So,
Well, I told you about a friend is working on a project in Jamaica where they're being required by the World Economic Fund to be carbon neutral when they build this paper manufacturing facility. And
mhm.
so they're going to have a solar farm, and then they're going to have water pumped up a hill into a reservoir
Mhm.
during the day. And so the
Yep.
water is going to actually be the battery. The water will be the battery. And then at night, it's going to release the water, and it's going to use
Yep.
hydroelectric to power
And
the facility.
Puerto Rico is perfect. No, I'm sorry, Jamaica.
Jamaica.
Jamaica is that? Yeah, Jamaica. Jamaica is perfect for that. If you look at the topography of that island,
Hmm.
it's because you've got all these mountains and all these little valleys and things that you can take and, put a dam in front of, and plenty of, water that comes down through the rainy season, and, hurricanes and things of that nature. That's perfect for them. That's absolutely perfect.
Yeah, but it's interesting because you're talking about other types of batteries. Now, at first time when you talk about those types of batteries, I'm thinking about sodium ion. And then you got me thinking about, oh, well, they're doing this with, building the retention pond,
Right.
and it's really crazy to think about that they use that much solar to pump that much water to power the factory and go back
Mhm.
with all of that. And I don't know, somebody's got to be crazy good at math.
Yeah, the numbers work. I think they have that. They've had that for, I don't know, probably 15, 20 years in the Canary Islands. They've been doing that, or the
Oh,
Azores,
okay.
the two. Yeah, yeah,
It sounds
pump
like something
storage.
the Romans would have done.
You know what? If the Romans had progressed far enough along with, electrical generation, because they already had, they were
The
already
aqueducts.
masters of water manipulation,
Right,
with
right.
no power input. They didn't have donkeys, going around, a track powering these things. They had just figured out how to do this and rely on the resource. Of course, they had to burn lots of wood to heat the water, but as far as moving water around, man, they're just masters at it. And
No,
those projects are still standing 2,000 years later. It's just
yeah, it
phenomenal.
does boggle the mind, doesn't it? But the vehicle to grid, and if you don't understand the concept, is that, and this is still in its infancy. Laws are already being passed in various states to allow it. I think Maryland was the first state. They just passed something like in the past month. And what it does is it allows you to use your car's battery as a vessel to store energy either from the grid or your solar, and
Mhm.
then to send it back to the
Yeah.
grid when they need it, and you get paid for it to make extra money from your
Right.
EV. And it's
So think of it currently, like my car upstairs takes energy from one direction. I take it from the grid and put it in the battery. Whereas moving forward, we'll have the ability to take it back out of the battery and share it either with our own little network in our house, or share it with our neighbors, or share it, on the larger grid. Yep.
All right.
That's exciting. Yep.
So this is coming from Market Beat. This is talking about Canoe, which is Go EV on the stock market. And the reason I was interested in mentioning this, because all of a sudden their short interest has increased by 11.8%. This means that a lot of your institutional players think that the stock is going down. And some of this may be, EV companies seem to be fragile in that they're really easy to subject to these short sale attacks. Now, I've talked a lot about naked short sales on the thing, where basically when you short a stock, you have to have in margin, you have to have enough money set aside to pay for the stock if you're forced to buy it at some price. And a lot of times it seems like some of these short sellers are not forced to do these margin calls. And this has been there's been investigations in the SEC and FINRA looking at what's going on here. But it seems like nobody ever gets punished.
Yeah.
And it's really unfortunate to see.
Doesn't that sound familiar? We won't go there. I'm sorry.
Yeah. But anyways, it's really a tragedy, because I've seen so many companies. I mean, that Mullen EV, they were absolutely decimated. They've
just been downgraded again. Or there's a comment today that here's 3 stocks you need to get out of. The very first one they list is Mullen.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Yeah. That doesn't surprise me. But let's see. We had the CEO of Greenland Tech on, and I really liked him. And he didn't talk about it on the show about the short sale, but I asked him off the air, and he actually defended a short sale by buying up as much stock out of the float as he possibly could at the discounted price with his own cash, and it forced all the short sellers out of the market. And they haven't come back after him again since then. But their stock isn't huge. They only have a market cap of like maybe $40-50 million. I mean, not that that's still not a lot of money, but it was impressive that he was able to do what he was able to do. And it was, these other companies don't have that excess cash. I mean, of all the people that we really looked at in the EV space in the United States, Greenland's one of the few that's profitable besides Tesla. Most of the other EV makers in the US, they're all struggling.
Still struggling.
Yeah. And it's funny because, a while back we did some stuff about Aptera, and I've had lots of people comment, it's like Aptera can stand on its own or whatever. It's like, I think that's wishful thinking, because they're not producing. So right now they're only doing enough.
They still have just handfuls of little prototype things, showing up in their Carlsbad factory. So
if they were delivering vehicles to people, that'd be a different story, but they're not. And, they need somebody to get them off their butt and delivering vehicles, and that takes cash, and it's cash that they keep hoping to raise in some non-dilutive manner. And I just don't see that coming to them just automatically.
Well, I keep pulling for them. I like the guys. I love the concept. That car's about as green, in the sense of energy efficiency as you could possibly get.
For everybody wanting you hear this, it's like it takes 100 pounds of coal to power a Tesla and all this other stuff. You can't make any of those arguments about the Aptera because it is a solar powered 3-wheel vehicle. Looks more like an airplane than a car. And it seats 2, but it has lots of space in it. You can even camp in it. It's long, and there's room to lay out in a sleeping bag in the back, and it's really unique. It has a 400-mile battery, does 0 to 60 in 4 seconds. I mean, it's got impressive numbers all around.
What's not to like about it, other than it's not a family carrier.
No,
it's just 2 people and however many suitcases and golf carts they can stuff behind. It's kind of like I had the one of the earliest Honda Insights, and
Mhm.
there was two seats and space behind my head, throw groceries or a briefcase or whatever. So, but it worked. Of course, we had a sedan as a backup car, but
Right.
this is even better because it doesn't. All you got to do is just park it out in the sunshine. That's all you need to do.
Yeah, and at the moment, it's planned to absorb about 40 miles of
Yeah.
solar per day of additional range. But by the time they ever get released, it'll probably be absorbing 60 because they keep improving solar tech.
No,
I've even I've somebody's got now a nano coating that can go on all solar panels that'll
Mhm.
increase the efficiency by about 25%.
Yeah,
So I give it another 10 miles a day right there.
yeah.
So I wanted to talk today. We've done a Cadillac ELR. We did Nissan Leaf a couple days ago.
Hmm.
Today we're going to cover the Chevy Bolt. Okay,
Go for it.
so we're going to cover used Chevy Bolt. So what I've been
I
doing
was,
is I've been talking
I was,
about.
I was there when they rolled it out. They had a big curtain around it, Detroit, and they pulled the curtain, and I was standing there next to it. So I
Now,
know it well.
the reason I keep showing these, because unless
Yeah.
you're from another planet and you haven't been into the news, because of the Inflation Reduction Act from a couple of years ago, there is a $4,000 federal point of sale credit available if you make under $150,000 a year for buying a used EV that's under $25,000. Now, I've seen some weird manipulation on some of these numbers to make this fit, but what's interesting is these are these first ones are from the same dealership, it looks like.
Yeah.
Could be different parts of the country, but these are 2023 Chevy Bolt EUV, which I think it says for extended utility or no electric utility vehicle.
Yeah.
There's
It's a
another
little
one that's
larger, I
just the
think. Yeah.
EV,
Yeah.
but I'm going to show both of them. But here's one 2023, 7,000 miles, 22.5. Now, what I don't know is because people have been manipulating, sometimes these numbers reflect the $4,000 tax credit
Right.
being used, but they're
Right.
not putting it in the ad. Okay,
Right.
some places put it in the ad, so at least
You
these
know
ones
what
aren't
you're
putting it
getting.
in the ad. So let's assume this is really more like 26.5, but you're getting $4,000 for the down payment and price reduction from the federal government. And it's really hard to pass these up. I mean, the Chevy Bolt, I'm not sure what the range is on a Bolt. Let's take a look here. It'll tell us.
It's over 200. It's like 250, something like that.
Yeah. So the Bolt has a longer 247. So that's a pretty
Yeah.
decent range.
Yeah.
Says 7-hour battery charge time. That's on a level 2 charger. The thing that's a little deceptive, the Bolt is one of the slower, and the Leaf that we talked about the other day, they're
Yeah.
not quick on superchargers.
Right.
They throttle the amount of power that comes in, and so they can't take power into them like some of the stuff like the
Yeah.
Teslas can.
I'm sure that has to do with warranty. They
Could
want
be.
that battery to last as possibly long. And if you're always, if you look at the Teslas and if they're constantly being charged from a supercharger at the maximum rate, that does impact the battery life. So I'm guessing that GM just made, because they had that early problem with that car catching fire, those
Right.
batteries. And so
So
they just sat and said, look, we're going to throttle that. People are going to charge these things at home anyway. There's no hurry. If they're going to take it on a long trip, well, we're still going to give them, a good amount of range, so they won't have to stop as frequently. So I think there was some engineering reason behind it.
some of these numbers reflect this includes a $1,400 store transfer. So that's probably so the price is probably lower than this. It's probably really 24,000. Then you can take the 4,000 maybe. But these are a little cheaper. But I'm going to also change this to the other Bolt.
What's a store transfer? So you buy it online. It's located, let's say, in Chicago, Illinois, and I'm out here in Omaha. I'm going to pay them $1,400 to have the car shipped here.
To a local. Yeah, it sounds something like that.
Yeah.
It sounds something like that. But here's one here we go. These are in Nebraska. Plattsmouth, Columbus.
Oh, that's down here.
Yeah. So here's a Chevy Bolt EV Premier. So that's going to have nice equipment for 16,000. Oh, but this is a 17. Now a 17 is a little different, okay? Because they did have battery issues on the ones older than a 21. Wasn't that it?
Yes.
It was 21 that they made the improvements, I think.
Right. Yeah.
And this still has a 238-mile range, but this one might be a little more buyer beware. What I find fascinating, though, is how similar the price is, though, from a one that's that old to the 23. I mean, that's not a big price difference. We talk about, like, people talk about how they're depreciating like crazy and all that. It's like, that's not a real big gap for 6 years.
Yeah.
I mean, that's
Oh,
not
well,
even
then it could be just
$1,000.
the
That's
way.
$1,000 a year.
Yeah. How many miles are on that one?
19,000.
Oh, that's not bad. Yeah, it's well equipped. So,
That's one thing about EVs is the used ones tend to not have high miles on them. People
no.
tend not to really drive them as much. And so you got a lot of opportunities and some. So here's a 2020 that's 14,000. Let me see. It says something about $2,000 included for homing or something like that. $2,000 for delivery to Papillion, okay, which is where I live. I don't know where it's coming from. It's being shipped from Hawaii, for all I know. It doesn't say what the actual location of this car is, but 259-mile range it's the equivalent. It costs about the same as if you were driving gas and you were getting 120 miles per gallon.
Yeah.
That's a pretty big difference. Let me see if it includes the 4,000. Sometimes, like they mention it. Oh, it says save up to 4,000 instant rebate. So I don't know
So
that
are
they're
they
including the
including
price
that or
there.
not? That's yeah.
That seems like a really good price.
We should get on the phone. Let's do this sometime. Let's get on the phone and call them.
Yeah,
It could, but we'd have to figure out some kind of a way to record the call, But anyway, that
right.
would be
No,
interesting.
I'm with you. Yeah, I'm with you. But it's really cheap, and for somebody who needs a car, that extra $4,000 being used as a down payment isn't bad. And these could be used for everything from delivery to Uber,
Yeah.
all kinds of things somebody could do with one of these, and that's
Well,
plenty of range.
I published an article where the guy actually here yesterday that made the point that this depreciation is providing a way for low income families to actually get into an electric car now because
Right.
of that depreciation. So yeah, I drive one and I'm very happy with it. I haven't had any issues with it. So replaced the battery, which was
Hmm.
which was like 8 years old, and replace a burned out tail light. That's it. So I've been very, very happy with my little Fiat. So
Now, what's funny though is if I had done that search and I had done it on, say, like a Toyota Corolla, all of the results would have been local.
well,
Those
yeah,
are results from all over the country. There
yeah,
just aren't a whole lot of used
no,
EVs for sale. And we
no,
hear all this all the time about how they're depreciating like crazy, but they're just not out there to buy.
yeah, they're rare. Yeah,
Yeah, it
particularly
is.
that ELR, right?
Right. Yeah, where we could find like 5 of them for sale
Yeah,
across the whole country.
yeah,
So it is kind of interesting to state because yeah, they're depreciating, but there aren't very many examples of what to expect. And I think for a dealer, it's hard to know what you're taking in terms of the battery. There's
yeah.
actually
That's
places you can have battery tests done on a
yep,
used EV, but this isn't a service that people are knowledgeable about
right.
and not being done. I kind of like what the guy we had on here that one time that has the used EV dealership. He doesn't sell anything that's not like grade A.
Right.
So if it's not pristine, he's
Don't do
not
it.
buying it. Nothing. It could not have been in any accidents or no claims on it. Nothing. He won't touch
Yeah, yeah,
anything at all. And so his stuff is super clean. And I think that's probably a pretty good policy. Although it's tough because I've looked at the auto auctions, for the dealers, and it says what kind of grade everything is in. It's like it's really hard to find pristine cars that are available out there that are going to the auctions.
Yeah.
There's usually stuff that has to be cleaned up.
Yeah. Hey, can we talk a minute about fool's gold?
Sure, let's do that.
Pyrite, okay?
Mm-hmm.
Pyrite. University of West Virginia, or West Virginia University, has found that there is lithium in pyrite, or which of course we call fool's gold, and that because of the sulfur content in that element mixture of lithium and everything that makes crystals or whatever that makes pyrite fool's gold,
right,
that actually they can extract over half of the lithium that is in that ore because of that. And so now they're going back and they're starting to ask, all those mines that were dug up and put the pyrite aside because there was no use or value to it.
Right.
We can now look at those again as sources of high quality, low cost lithium, which I think is really cool because you just go to the Rockies, and you pick up a stone and there's gold, well, no, it's fool's gold, pyrite. But that could be a very promising source of low cost lithium. We'll see how it develops. I mean, we're talking laboratory research and things, but that could be a very promising source for something that we all thought had no value.
Yeah, that's pretty fascinating. I heard Musk talking about the fact that there's no shortage of lithium on the planet.
Oh no.
People for some reason think there's a shortage of it, and he said there's no shortage. It's one of the most common things on the planet.
Yeah, getting to it, and processing it varies because you can get basically lower cost lithium out of the salar, in the Andes or out of the dry lakes in the Himalayas, than it is to go into a rock mine in Canada and pull it up and extract. Where did I put it? Reaching into my desk and pulling up a piece of it right there, right? That comes out of a mine in Canada. And that little green tint that's on there, that's lithium. But you have to pulverize it and separate it and all that. So the difference between the salt pans in the Andes or the Himalayas and a rock mine that you can pull it out of. So yeah, there's lots there. And frankly, they're now pulling it up out of the brine that's coming out of the geothermal wells around the Salton Sea. What's the other source? Oh, and there's the Pacific. There's the ocean. It's in the ocean. So I think I remember reading somewhere. I think that they've now found fairly high concentrations of lithium in the Dead Sea. Right.
Not surprising at all.
Yeah, they just figure out, because I had an opportunity decades ago to actually float. You don't really swim, but float in the Dead Sea. And all you had to do is reach your hand down and pick up big chunks of salt that had collected on the bottom of the Dead Sea over millions of years or whatever it is. So there's plenty there. It's just figuring out how to process it and make it less expensive. So.
All right, I get it. You also wanted to talk today about a statistic about the number of chargers compared to gas stations now.
Yeah, we have. This is just one of those little, side note kind of things. They now report that for every 15 gasoline stations there are in America, there's one fast charger, DC fast charger. So
just one charger, not like that count. So bank of chargers would.
Well, now there I don't know. Are they counting? Okay. Are they counting the stations with the fast chargers, or are they counting just the individual unit? Good question. That I don't know if the article clarified. It's just that you got fast chargers now. For one of those, there's or for every 15 stations, there's a fast charger. Is that enough? Of course not.
But that's almost the same ratio of electric to gas cars in this country.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
actually, there's fewer. That's actually higher. That's higher because new car sales are around, probably 8%, but total adoption in the United States probably only like 2%. So if you've got 6% to 7% as many fast chargers as there are gas stations, then it shouldn't be a big issue.
Yeah.
I've never seen chargers be full, but we don't live in a big city, per se. Omaha's not really. It's a city, but it's not like New York or LA. Whereas you hear situations of places on the West Coast where all the chargers will actually be full.
Yeah, well, all of our close, the closest supercharger station that we have where you might see something like that, was over in Council Bluffs on the Iowa side of the river. So I'm not going to drive over there. It's behind a Walmart, and I'm not going to drive over there every day and find out how they're being charged. They're there, and people are using them, but yeah. Oh, the other thing about fast chargers too is that there's a question. I mean, I've been sort of working some of this to make multifamily housing, condos and apartments, get them to have chargers. And so the question is, do you put in lots of level 2, right? Or do you put in one large DC charger? And I came across an article that I shared with the city planning department, that actually this particular condo developer found that it made more sense for them to go with one central high-speed DC charger. And it lists the reasons why we're not taking up any parking. The costs are about the same. So just from their perspective as a condo developer, one single fast charge DC charger made more sense than multiple level 2 chargers.
As long as they're not outrageous on the cost of the electricity flowing through it.
Well, that all depends on how, is it part of a concierge service? Or you have to have a membership that you pay for, kind of like an HOA type of thing. Depends on what the electricity rates are and what your local laws are. Here in Nebraska, being a public utility, a company like if I decide to go into business and create, quick charge for a name, I could not sell the electricity on a kilowatt basis. I'm not allowed to do that in the state. So I have to figure out some other kind of strategy to recoup my investment. But other states, you can do that. So that's why there's such a disparity between, what you might pay one place and what you might pay somewhere else.
I just remember being in Florida and visiting one of my friends in his apartment building, and there was a fast charger in the parking garage, and it was 34 cents a kilowatt hour.
Yeah, well,
and when we're used to 11 cents here in Nebraska.
Oh, yeah. Oh, believe me, it's a lot higher elsewhere. There are places, where it's well over 60, 70 cents a kilowatt. Not here.
Oh, Lord.
Not that I'm aware of here in the United States, but like, for example, in the Caribbean islands and elsewhere, it's much higher.
That seems nuts when you figure they have unlimited sunshine.
Yeah,
they should just have solar.
But at the point, at this particular point, there aren't that many solar arrays going up and wind farms going up to feed that grid. Still, a lot of that energy is coming out of
coal.
Well, no, not coal. In the Caribbean, they use crude oil, and so they buy their oil mainly heavy crude from Venezuela. And some of it coming from some of the oil off of the west coast of Africa and places like that, and they come in. And I mean, there's big tank farms there in the Caribbean that are acres and acres of tank farms that accept oil from, for example, either the Middle East or from West Africa or from Venezuela, and then they take and aggregate it there, and they may refine it there. Most people don't realize there's a big refinery on the island of Aruba, and they take and that's one of the major employers, or had been. I don't know if they're still in operation or not, but at one point they were one of the largest employers on Aruba. Not the tourist industry, the oil refiner down on the end of the island.
Oh, wow. Well, you know, it's just different to see. I think Nebraska rates as maybe the cheapest state in the union for
Yes.
electricity. So
Yep.
we're pretty cheap.
Yep.
So I probably don't get as much value out of my solar as I would if I were in some other state, but
Oh
still.
yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Have we
Anyways, well,
covered
Bill,
it?
yeah. Well, good show today, Bill.
Yeah.
And we'll be
Thanks
back
for
next
everybody who
week.
stopped by and listening. We believe me, we really appreciate you guys doing that, or gals.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
No, anyways, everybody have a great day, and we'll be back. We'll be back with a deeb tomorrow.
Okay. Happy investing.